Good afternoon. I'm just going to briefly talk about Tehran's perspective and how potentially Iranian leaders view not just the nuclear program, but negotiations with the United States and the P5+1. This is important because we have the upcoming talks in Moscow, and we had the talks in Baghdad, and both talks have been described as being critical to reaching a solution to the Iranian nuclear crisis, a peaceful solution perhaps. Khamenei has admitted that sanctions against Iran are taking a toll. He's described them as being harsh, crippling, as a number of other officials. And we can assume that because of these sanctions, especially sanctions against the Iranian central bank, the upcoming European oil embargo that's set to take place in July, that Khamenei realizes that the costs are increasing and he might be more amenable to some sort of compromise. For him, the nuclear program is an essential component of his regime's conflict with the United States. And there are a number of reasons why Iran could be pursuing a potential nuclear weapons capability. The most important, perhaps, is an issue of deterrence. Iran is surrounded by U.S. forces. It has a relatively weak conventional military capability. It sees itself as being very vulnerable. That past history, like the Iran-Iraq war, has shown Iranian leaders potentially that they need a deterrent against superior forces. The nuclear program is also a matter of power and prestige. Iran wants to be seen as the dominant power in the Persian Gulf and the wider Middle East. But there's also an issue of revolutionary and nationalist pride. When Khamenei talks about the nuclear program, he talks about Iran's scientific achievements, especially in the face of its increasing isolation and sanctions. He mentions scientific progress repeatedly and consistently. And for him, the nuclear program, Iran's ability to enrich uranium, is a sign of success for the revolution, despite all the odds. When we look at Iran, we have to take into consideration the long-term U.S. policy toward Iran, not just the nuclear weapons program, but the kind of country we want Iran to be in the future, what kind of relations we would like to have with Iran. And I think when we look at Iran as a country, as a society, some of the long-term trends are positive. You have a population that is youthful, that wants to be engaged with the outside world, that does not necessarily support nuclear weapons, although Iranians largely support the enrichment program. They don't necessarily produce weapons. You have a population that wants better relations with the United States and regional countries. And the Iranian regime, despite calling the Arab uprisings the Islamic awakening, is also vulnerable to the very same forces that have seen the toppling of pro-United States regimes across the region. Whether those factors are economic or lack of legitimacy, the regime remains vulnerable to those issues. So when we look at Iran, I think the long-term trends are more positive than the short-term trends.